Shalom Aleichem, Project Inspire. There's nothing more inspiring than talking to people who want to be inspired. So let's get right to the point and inspire each other. I want to just wish everybody a good Pesach, and hopefully these ideas will enhance our Yontif together. I'm talking about the bones of Yosef. Before Yosef died, he told his brothers that one day you're going to be redeemed from Egypt and take my bones with you out when you go back to the promised land, to Eretz Yisrael. And I want to talk about the significance of that, because it's a one line, but I think it's essential to understanding the whole holiday of Pesach. Freedom, emotional freedom, everything is dependent on the ability to take the bones of Yosef with you. And to do that, we have to understand what they are, who they are, and what they represent. So let's get straight to the point. Yosef, Yaakov is the father of the 12 tribes. Yosef is Yaakov's child from Rachel. Rachel and Yaakov is considered the greatest love story in the entire, in maybe all of history. Remember, Yaakov had to work 14 years to marry her. He made a deal with her father, I'm going to work 7 years for your daughter Rachel, but Lavan tricks him, and he ends up marrying her older sister Leah. And that itself is devastating, but Yosef then worked 7 more years to marry Rachel, and finally, after 14 years, he finally got to marry Rachel, and Yosef is the child of his old age, and therefore Yaakov loves Yosef more than anything you could possibly imagine. In that context, is the story I want to study here. Yosef comes to his brothers and said, I had a dream. And it says that the brother, they hate him. It's actually the second hatred. They already hated him because the Torah first said that Yaakov loved Yosef more than the other kids, and he made him his colorful coat. And by Yisnu Isai, they hated him. But then there's a second hatred. Yosef says, I had a dream. It says, Vayusifu, they hate him even more for dream, not only for the coat and the love, but they hate him now for the dream. And then he says, Tishma, listen to the dream. And he tells him over the dream that we're all bushels in the field, and your bushels bow down to the bushel that represents me. And then there's another dream that we're all stars in the sky, and all your stars and the sun and the moon bow down to the star that represents me. These are his dreams. And then it says a third time, by Yosifu Oid Snoyosai. They hate him a third time. First they hate him because his father loved him and he gave him this colorful coat. Then he says, I had a dream. By Yosifu Oid, they hate him even more. And then he says, listen to the dream, and tells him the dream, and now it says they hate him even more for his dreams and his words. So first they hate him for the coat and the love, then they hate him for telling them he had a dream, and then they hate him when he tells them the dream for his dreams and his words. And then later Yaakov realizes things aren't so wonderful, and he needs to make peace. So he sends Yosef out into the field to be with his brothers. Hopefully they'll work together. Somehow everything will become reconciled. Instead, the brothers decide before he comes, this can't go on like this. He's walking around with these dreams, living, and bowing down to him. And they decide to do something terrible. And when he comes, instead of overtures for peace, they're taunting him. And it describes the taunt. They go, here comes the dreamer. Everybody look who's coming. It's the dreamer. The dreamer's here. So I want to go through 3 questions that we'll use to cast a different light on the entire story. The first question is I understand they hate him because their father loves him and he buys him gifts. They hate him. But then he says, I had a dream, and says they hate him. And then he tells him the dream, and they hate him even more. My question is, if the third stage is he tells them the dream, so why did they hate him when he said, I had a dream? He didn't even say the dream yet. The dream, he only tells them the dream in the third stage. So what's the hate? What's the second hatred? The first hatred was for the love and the coat. The third hatred was that you're going to bow down to me in the dream. The second stage is inscrutable. Like, what is it? He says, I had a dream, and they hate him even more. Maybe it was a wonderful dream. Maybe it was a positive dream. Maybe it was a humble brotherhood dream. And the second question, that's the first question. The second question is then he tells them the dream, and it says they hate him for his dreams and his words. What does that mean? What's the difference between the dreams and the words? Aren't the words of the dreams? He had a dream, and he goes, listen to what the dream is, you're going to bow down to me, and those are the words. So they hate him for the words of his dreams, maybe, but not the dreams and his words, as if it's 2 different things. That's the second question. What's the difference between the dreams and the words? And the third question is, it's a subtle question, but it's an important question. If your brother tells you that he has these dreams that you're going to bow down to him, and then he's coming out in the field, not that you'd ever want to bully somebody, but let's say you would want to bully somebody. You do a better job bullying than they did. Like, what did they say? What should they have said? The guy just told you, I have a dream that you are bowing down. Not only all the stars, the sun, the moon. Ostensibly, mommy and daddy are also going to bow down to me. So what do you tell that guy? You want to make fun of him. You're going to say he comes the dreamer? No, you're going to say he comes the king, the megalomaniac, the big guy, the man. Everybody bow down. Everybody, look who's here. Mr. Big Shot's here. That's what you would say. Isn't it a little bit missing the point that they taunt him, here comes the dreamer? This is my question. Right? 3 questions. Number 1 is, they hate him when he said, I had a dream. They don't even know what the dream is yet. Then he tells them the dream, they hate him for his dreams and his words. What's the difference? And finally, he comes out in the field, and they hate him because why? They hate him because he's the dreamer, and not because he's the megalomaniac. So what's the story? So here's the answer. The answer is like this. This is very, very important. Is that everybody grows up with dreams. Dreams are who we are, our longings. We grow up tying towels around our necks, jumping off of furniture, right? Girls dream of being princesses, and boys want to be heroes, or any dreams in the world. But when we're young and we're innocent and optimistic, and we haven't compromised yet, or cheated, or felt shame yet, the experience of someone who has never tasted shame is to dream. The fire, the passion, the longing, that's the hunger, that's the feelings that beat in our heart before we've been broken. And that's the healthy, that's freedom. That's shleimus, completion. And then unfortunately what happens is life happens and we get knocked around. Maybe it's a little league coach, maybe it's parents fighting in the kitchen when you're trying to sleep, and maybe it's kids in school who rejected you, maybe you're at schools, maybe it's dating, maybe it's business. Things happen that we no longer believe we're going to be heroes. And when you stop when you stop thinking your dreams will come true, you lose your dreams. And we're broken. And we become a shell of who we used to be. Yosef walks into the room, and the brothers, they hear him. He says, I had a dream. You know why? Because Yosef grew up in a home of Yaakov and Rachel. Yosef grew up in a home where his father worked 14 years to marry his mother. You know what happens when your father works 14 years to marry your mother? You know how you know how Yaakov looked at Rachel? You know what Yosef saw in his father's eyes? The love that Yosef saw in his father's eyes makes Yosef bulletproof. There's no way that Yosef is going to lose his dreams. There's nothing that could happen to him. He can go to school and he can get bullied by anybody in the school. And he'll just come skipping home and going, Daddy, we have like the weirdest guy in my class. Because he's bulletproof. Because his father worked 14 years to marry his mother. Yosef never lost his dreams. But yet the brothers grew up in a home where their mother married Yaakov because he was tricked. Because her father swindled him. And she goes to sleep every night crying. And how does she name her children? A testament to her pain. Reuven, Hashem sees my pain. Shimon, Hashem will hear my pain. Levi, this time my husband will come be with me. The brothers grew up in a home where their mother was broken by the sadness. She was the snua. That's what she calls herself. And Rachel was the ahuva, the loved one. And Yosef therefore grows up. Yosef's the dreamer. When it says that Yosef's the balach haloimas, Yosef walks into the room and he says, brothers, I had a dream. And their eyes glaze over with anger. Because they too once had dreams. And Yosef skipping into the room, innocent, with wide-eyed, and just talking about his dreams is so painful. Because we once also had dreams. And he's reminding me of what I used to be like. And that's the pain. When Yosef says, I had a dream, they hate him even without hearing the dream. They hate him for being the dreamer. They hate him for still dreaming. How dare you come down to earth like the rest of us? Get your hands dirty. You're living in La La Land. It's a real world. What are you, 2-year-old? And that Chazal, they describe Yosef. They want you to understand who he is. They describe him in weird ways. He's brushing his hair. He's prancing. He's writing poetry. They want you to see Yosef as pristine. The adult who wasn't broken by the ravages of life. Because he grew up in a house where his father loved his mother like nothing else. And that makes him bulletproof. But the brothers don't have the luxury of being bulletproof. And they're defensive, and they have to struggle in the world without the safety net of that relationship. And therefore when Yosef says, I have a dream, it kills them. And then the second question, he says, listen to the dream. And he tells them over the dreams, you're going to bow down to me. And now they hate him for his dreams and his words. Not only do we hate you for dreaming, but we don't even like your dream that you're going to bow down to us. It's two different hatreds. The first one is we hate you, you're a dreamer. Get real. Come down to the real world. Don't live in La La Land. And the second hatred is the hatred that you think we're going to bow down to you? Even mommy and daddy, the stars and the moon, the bushels of wheat, we're all bowing down to you? Who do you think you are? They hate him for his dreams and his words. But let me ask you the deepest question. Which pain do you think is worse? Is it harder to deal with the pain once you've lost your dreams of seeing somebody still dreaming? Or is it harder to deal with the pain of having to bow down to somebody who's more powerful than you? I'll put it out there that I think it's far more powerful to deal with the idea of someone reminding you of your own dreams. We're all forced to humble ourselves in front of people. That's something you suck it up and you get it over with. But the idea to live your entire life knowing that you had dreams and being reminded of it constantly is your existential pain. And we see it clearly in the story when Yosef comes out into the field. The brothers see this person who evokes two types of hatred in them. The resentment that he's reminding me of my own dreams. Look at him still dreaming. He didn't get the memo that this is a mean, broken world and you can't walk around so innocent and optimistic. The optimist is painful. But it also says we're going to bow down to him. But the brothers say, here comes the dreamer, the balach haloimes, because that's the deeper pain. There's no pain in the world like being reminded of your own dreams, because that's who you are. And once you're broken and you don't believe your dreams will come true, your enemy becomes your own thoughts. Because the only way I can live is to detach myself from what I wanted. We learn how to roll our eyes. We learn how to sneer, how to be derisive. We learn sarcasm, pessimism, and that's the coping mechanism to silence the thing beating inside of us, our own essence. We're pouring water on the flames of our own fire, and that's what that's the selling of Yosef. And the proof of this whole thing is, what are the words they use when they sell him? Why are they selling him according to me, right? Yosef's walking in, talking about dreams. They may have succeeded at hiding from all their dreams. You know, if you work hard enough, if the machinery is loud enough, if your texts and your emails come in a steady enough stream that you never have silence, you maybe could hide from your dreams if you're busy or it's loud or it's dark enough, or if you drink enough, or if you run far enough. There are ways to silence dreams. But then there's the one person who walks in and pokes a hole in the wall that you built around yourself to protect you from your own thoughts, and that's Yosef. So what do you need to do to Yosef? You need to wipe that smile off of his face, and that's what they do. And what are the words they use? We're going to sell him to the Egyptians, send him to Egypt. Ma'yu chaloi moisav. What will be with his dreams? We'll see what will be with your dreams. The entire point of selling him was to silence the dreams so that they can go back to sleep at night without that thought in their head. That's how it looks. It's going to be subtly different in a second because I have to add a little nuance. The brothers are tzaddikim, you know, they're flawed, and there's a terrible story, the selling of Yosef, but we're going to see in contrast to what the Egyptians live with. This story I described is exactly, though, what happens in Egypt. In Egypt, the Jews are there and they're successful. Vayishutzu, vayirbu, vayatzmu ma'od ma'od. They grow and they become powerful. And Paro's reaction to the Jews' success, and no matter what was done to them, they thrived. They always landed with their feet on the ground. So what's the word it uses? Vayakutzu mipnei b'nei Yisrael. They were disgusted from before the Jews. It's a very weird phrase that you don't become disgusted in somebody because of success. You can become threatened, and the Torah describes they felt threatened. Maybe it'll be a war, the Jews will join with them. It makes sense that the Torah would describe that Paro would hate the Jews or be scared of the Jews. And look how much they're making all the money, they control the banks, they control Hollywood, they control everything, and we could hate them. But in what mindset, in what way can you wrap your head around the idea that somebody's reaction to the success of the Jews, there's multiple successes, we're not going to get into it, but vayirbu, vayatzmu, vayishvitzu, there's many different phrases here of growth, and they're the ma'od, all those things very, very much, like the total success, overperformance. So you could feel threatened, you could be scared, you could be jealous, but to be disgusted. And the other question is a subtle nuance is you're not disgusted before, you're disgusted in. Vayakutsu mipnei b'nei Yisrael. If you speak Hebrew, mipnei, from before. So if it said they were disgusted in, by, about, of the Jews, but that's the answer to the question. Not the way it's commonly translated. Literally, Vayakutsu mipnei Yisrael, mipnei b'nei Yisrael, they were disgusted from before the Jews. Who were they disgusted in? They were disgusted in themselves from before the Jews. In seeing the Jewish success, it's a reminder of everything that they're living the lives that I wanted before I got broken. These are my dreams. And then the Jewish home, and the Jewish fire, and the Jewish optimism, and the Jewish performance. You see who you once were. Everybody wanted to be a bas melech, a princess. It's not just people who are sneistic and modest. There's not a 10-year-old girl in the world who didn't want to be that modest princess. The loss of modesty is what comes when you lose your dreams. Everybody wants to be heroes when we're young. We don't monopolize holiness. Every child in the world has the same dreams. Purity and goodness and innocence and truth, and to be a hero, to matter. Then we lose them. We get broken. And then we see someone living those dreams, we're disgusted not by the person, we're disgusted in ourselves from them. And the need is to wipe that smile off their face. And this is the understanding of the persecution of the Egyptians. The Paro represents the person who needs to wipe the smile off people's faces, and we'll see why in the extra depth in the time. Let me switch over now to talk about Egypt. The Torah describes Egypt in one way. Describes Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, with the foil character of Egypt. In contrast to Egypt, what is the description of the land of Israel and compared to Egypt? I've spoken about this in the past, always in regards to Sukkot. I've never done this yet in my Pesach shmuz, Pesach talk. This is my first, but it's a similar idea. But if you heard my Sukkot talk, my Hoshana Rabbah talk, but now we get to see it from the other side. Is that Eretz Yisrael? Here's the words of the pasuk. Loi ke'eretz Mitzrayim. The land that you're going to is not like the land of Egypt. Asher shkisa beraglocha k'gana yerek. That your fields were fertilized in Egypt like a garden. That you dug irrigation ditches from the Nile. The Nile would overflow, and the whole Nile Valley would become irrigated and grow through the overflowing of the Nile. Israel has no such Nile. In Eretz Yisrael, Matara Shemayim, you wait all year. You need to wait for the rain. You're dependent on the rain, on God sending you the Gishmei Bracha, the waters of blessing to make your crops grow. This is the difference between Egypt and Israel. One difference. Egypt gets its water from the Nile, and Israel depends on rain. That's how the Torah wants you to understand the difference in the lands. But it's not a small difference. It's more than you need to know. Let's look at it. Everybody starts off with dreams. That's our whole talk. Everybody's longing for things. You know what the problem with dreams are? The problem with dreams is that you can get hurt. If you long for something, you're setting yourself up for terrible pain. So what many people do is you have to stop dreaming because I don't want to get hurt. The farmer can do every single thing he needs to do. Buys his piece of land, mortgages, right, huge payments, buys plows and oxen, and he wakes up early, and the farmer can be meticulous and diligent and vigilant. He can do everything he needs to do. But he can't control one thing. He doesn't know if it's going to rain. The farmer lives with a vulnerability. He has no control on the rain. What is a farmer to do? The farmer is the dreamer. The farmer is the person who knows the future he can provide for his family. He knows the home he could have. If only my crops will come. But he can do 90%. But if the rain doesn't fall, nothing will happen. Now, many people can't live that vulnerability. You can't. It's too risky. How do you sleep at night? How do you go? You go to sleep. It's a whole year. How do you invest the whole year? Maybe in the end, who knows? Maybe maybe it will be a famine. Maybe it'll be a dry year. So this is the beauty of the land of Israel. It's a land that you live in God's hand, and the entire year you're in a relationship with God, and you need to be connected to Hashem, because there is no buffer zone between your longings and reality. It's fragile and it's fickle, and you that vulnerability brings holiness. But most people can't live like this. And therefore Mitzrayim represents the idea that we've learned to live without rain. They don't need rain. The Nile overflows, and they only plant what they can around the Nile. If the Nile is not going to reach there, we won't plant, because then we'll need rain. Mitzrayim represents the idea that people will live with all their ducks in a row, their I's dotted, their T's crossed. I can't be vulnerable, and I can't long. And that's how I live, and that's how I protect myself. Mitzrayim is a land that refuses to entertain dreams, because dreams will break your heart. They raise their whole culture, they raise their children, don't dream. It'll just get crushed. And then every dreamer will hurt you. And then all of a sudden, so you live a whole life, and you have your Nile, and you've built a civilization around the Nile, right? I'll just stick in my Sukkot idea that you may have heard, Hoshana Rabbah, is that the same thing as the Nile is the Arava, the willow branches. The Torah describes the willow branch as what? The willow branch is Arvei Nachal. Willows of the stream. Nachal is a stream. They're water willows because they grow on the banks of the river and the streams, and they get irrigated from the streams, and they don't need rain. So the willow is to the plant kingdom what Egypt is to geography. And that's why the Torah says the willow is the worst thing. It has no tam and no reach, no taste and no smell. Because taste and smell comes from longing. Taste and smell comes from dreaming. Lying in your bed at night and thinking of what life is going to be like, that's what builds character and personality. If you only live with what's here already, and you never dream, and you never long for something that's not here, can you imagine how dry and sterile of a personality you become? You grow up without any passion, without any depth. And the same thing as Egypt. In the same way the willow has no taste and no smell, you know what happens to Pharaoh? Pharaoh has a dream. And there's no one in the entire country who can interpret his dream, because nobody knows what dreams are in Egypt. The Nile has gotten rid of all the needs for dreams, and there's a culture that doesn't dream. A culture that's punctuated by the Nile, but it covers all of their life. It is a person's dream, the longings that you had as a child are too risky, and they figure out how to live without it. So when Paro does have a dream, there's no one who knows they have to go find the Jewish kid from jail. The Bala Chaloima is the dreamer of a nation of dreamers. And he's going to tell us what the dream is. Because Yosef lives vulnerable. Yosef, so everything's in Hashem's hands. And that's, Egypt doesn't know what a dream is, and the Aravas don't have taste. And it's the same problem, because the Aravas and Egypt there's nothing vulnerable. They figured out how to live without needs. And this is why I think the brothers they send Yosef exactly to Egypt. If you're threatened by the dreamer, so how do you get rid of the dreams? You send them to Egypt. Egypt is the country where there's no dreams. Egypt is the country where where they've essentially outlawed dreams. And that's the wisdom that Paro says. Paro has he hears from his fortune tellers, whatever it is, that Yosef, that a hero is going to be born to the Jews. So if a hero is going to be born to the Jews, how do I squash that? How do I squash the hero? Right? So they told the nursemaids to kill the boys, and it didn't work. The more they tried to kill them, the more they multiplied. That's what it says. The more they persecuted, the more they grew. So then he came up with a new idea. You know what the new idea is? Kol haben hayiloid hayoira tashlichuhu. Every boy who's born, throw him in the Nile. The Nile represents the being dependent, the taking everything from given to you, no risks and no dreams. If you want to crush heroes, you want to crush dreamers, make them dependent on the government, make them dependent. You put them on the take. You create enough programs, and people will grow up with programs, then you'll squash the fire of passion and the fire of longing. That's what it means to throw the boys, both literally and figuratively, to throw them in the Nile. All because we have to protect ourselves from creating heroes. Maybe it's just a play on words, but what the Nile represents, what does the Nile represent? The Nile is the denial of who we are. We are dreamers. How do you get rid of dreams? Denial. The Nile. The Nile is the denial. Denial is the denial of your dreams. How do you deny your dreams when everything's taken care of for you? And the same way that, I'm not going to go into this here, this is not the place, this is more my Hoshana Rabbah talk, but it could be here too, because it's the same story, is how does Egypt learn to dream? How does the Arava, how do you get someone who's in denial to admit that he's not happy and that he does have dreams and that he doesn't like everything being fed to him on a silver spoon. So the answer is that Darova gets beaten on the ground and Egypt gets the makos. The makos, the plagues, the hitting, the same words, maka. God has to hit the Egyptians. People don't get out of denial. They don't leave their safe little alternative world without any dreams until the pain gets so great. The pain of living without dreams and denying my dreams and the loneliness that comes out of it gets so great. That's where you come out. So this is the story of the So now let's get to the bones. So Yosef is sent to Egypt to silence his dreams. Ma'iyu chaloi ma'isov. We're setting him to a land that doesn't have any dreams. And just to sum up everything we said is that people want to live, but we're afraid and we're in pain and we don't believe it'll come true. So what we do is we give up all our dreams and we live just around the Nile. What does it mean to live just around the Nile? We just live on the things that are available to us, and the things that are safe, and the things that are taken care of. And everything bigger, or everything deeper, everything I once wanted, we denied and make fun of it. We learn to roll our eyes and laugh. It's la la land, it's all childish. And this is the life of Egypt. And that's where Yosef was sent. But you know what happens to Yosef when he gets there? Yosef's the dreamer, and nothing breaks him. He goes to Potiphar's house, and he runs the whole house in a week. And then he goes to jail, and he runs the whole jail. And then he comes out of jail, and he runs all of Egypt. The dreams were sent from the Jewish people to Egypt, and Egypt becomes the power of the world. And they feed the world. Because the power of dreams to change anyone is crazy, and he rekindles and he brings a spark to the Egyptians that never existed for them. He changes all of Egypt. He moves it around. They create cities. That's what it says. What are cities? Cities are progress. Cities are the places where people are thinking of ideas. It's not rooted just in earth. It's not just the past, but it's the future. Yosef changes Egypt because the dreamer went from the Jewish people in Paro and Egypt. But then what happens is a new Pharaoh who doesn't remember Yosef. Yosef has died. And his bones are buried in Egypt. And Paro, a new Pharaoh, gets up, Asher lo yizachar es Yosef, who doesn't remember that flash where Egypt saw dreams. And actually it started to rain when Yosef and Yaakov, they all came down. It changed. The whole Egypt changed. But then they didn't remember Yosef. And when they didn't remember Yosef, they needed to silence the dreams. And they had to get rid of all the heroes. And then the Jewish people leave Egypt. And Hashem saves them because the pain gets so great, they cry out to Hashem. And they admit what they wanted. Let me just show you the last point of this story. What started the Geula? What started the redemption in Egypt? So if we're describing over here the entire Egyptian story, is Yosef was the dreamer. And that's what it means to be whole. So the slavery in Egypt is the squashing of dreams. Because people are disgusted by the dreams. I need to wipe that smile off your face. So Egypt is understood as the Nile, the land without dreams, no longing. It's a simple story. It's a story of dreams and the war against dreams. So the recovery from Egypt has to be nothing more than just the recovery of your dreams. So here's where the Geula starts. The Geula starts, we had something similar to the Ya'ar in the Mishkan. It was called the Kiyar, like the Ya'ar. The Kiyar was made from the copper mirrors of the Jewish women. What's the story of the copper mirrors? So I'm not going to read it inside Rashi, but you can look at the Rashi in Vayakel. The Jewish women had copper mirrors, and the men were broken by slavery, and that's what crushes you. And they lost all their dreams, and there was no fire, and there were no Jewish families. Nothing was going to happen. So the women would go out into the fields with these copper mirrors, and they would hold. Rashi describes, based on the Medrash, they would hold the mirrors up, and the men next to their husbands in the fields where they were working, where they were slaves, and they would look together into the mirrors, and the women would say to the husband, "Look, who's prettier, me or you?" Fascinating story. And then those copper mirrors were used to make the kiyar, the wash basin, our little ya'ar, the wash basin in the Mishkan. What's the story? So first, I would have thought, I always grew up, I thought that the mirrors had the mirror, so they used the mirrors to rekindle the spark in their husbands. I thought always, and many people think, that the way they used it was the women would beautify themselves in these mirrors, and then they would go, and their husbands would see that they were beautiful, and that would light their fire. But that's not what's described. It's a much more complex story. They would hold the mirror up, and they would look together into the mirror, and they would say, who's prettier? Chazal don't mess around. Every word is important. What is the significance? Wouldn't the same message have been if we just left it exactly as we thought, that they used the mirrors to beautify themselves, and somehow it's a holy thing, it's not an evil thing, passion is holy, like Yosef is a dreamer, and that would be a beautiful story. But there's much more to the story, because they didn't just beautify themselves with mirrors and then cover the kiyar, the wash basin, with it. They looked together into the mirrors, and they said, who's prettier? So I wanted to end with this, the practical advice of how do we rekindle dreams? How do we recover the Yosef? Because that's what it's going to mean. You don't go free without taking the bones of Yosef with you. Freedom is recovering Yosef's bones. Freedom is, you had a dreamer, you couldn't deal with the dreams. The brothers couldn't deal with the dreams. Egypt couldn't deal with it. Everybody fights the dreamer. No less today. We live in a world that's in a war with dreams. Laughing and rolling eyes and scoffing and whatever, all the magical antidotes to childish, naive, la-la land of youth. But that's our mission, is to recover that. And take back the bones of Yosef. There's no such thing as going to Israel without the bones of Yosef. Israel is the land of dreaming. You need rain. You have to be willing to long. You need the bones of Yosef. So here's how you get your bones back. And they took the mirrors and they looked at it together. So what is the reason that people don't have dreams? So the reason why people don't have dreams, if you talk to all the new life coaches and all the therapists, they'll tell you that you have to have a picture over your desk of the car that you want to drive, and every day you'll see that car, and then you'll work hard and you'll get it. It's a little simplistic. You see, everybody knows what they want. I don't need a picture over my desk of my dreams. I know very well what my dreams are. I know so well that I know exactly what I have to hide from. We know exactly when we have to cross the street, which books we can't read, which people we can't meet, except the ones who remind me of my dreams. Right? We all know that. Nobody needs to be, you don't need a picture over your desk, you know very well. The bottleneck, the weak link in the chain, the reason why we don't embrace our dreams is something much deeper and internal. It's not that I don't know what the dreams are. I do need to have a dream. It's fair. But the reason we don't know our dream, we don't achieve our dreams, is because we don't believe it's achievable. It's not that I don't know the car. I just think I'll never be able to afford it. It'll never happen for me. It's not in the cards. It's not in my stars. I'll never be able to achieve that. That's the reason we don't dream. Not because we don't know what we want, but because we don't believe it's achievable. So in order to rekindle dreams, you need both components. You have to know that there's something larger than you. You have to admit that there's something bigger than you that you can crave. But you can only do that when you know it's achievable. So those are the two components of a dream. Dreams are the secret of all of Judaism and all of life. And the secret and the war in the world is the war over dreams. But the cure for a dream is the knowledge that there's something bigger than me, and it's achievable. It's within reach. And this is the secret of what the Jewish women knew how to do in the field. And I think what we have to do at the Seder and through the holiday of Pesach, exactly what they did and how they triggered the recovery of dreams. They held the mirror up and they looked together with their husbands in the mirror. And they said, who's prettier, me or you? Who's prettier? Is there something to aspire to? But you could only admit who's prettier because the husband and wife were side by side in the same frame in the mirror. She held the mirror up that he saw himself right next to her in the mirror. We have to look at the mirror together, and your dreams have to be alongside you. You have to see yourself in the frame. The wisdom of the Jewish woman wasn't just looking in the mirror and saying there's something pretty. The men knew how holy their wives were, but they were still broken because it wasn't reachable. What the men needed to see was not that their wives were beautiful. What they needed to see is that they were in the same frame. Is that they held the mirror and he was in the same frame. They fit. I'm there. When the person realizes that's the avodah of Pesach, and that's there by the Seder, it's to convince your children, to convince the Jewish people that this is yours. The Torah speaks Keneged all the Arba Bonim. Everyone has a place by the Seder. The first words is Kol Dichvin Yesei V'Yechol. Everyone come. The avodah of Pesach is nothing more than the rekindling of dreams, because that's not just what Pesach, that's what life is. Yosef was the dreamer, and the world went to war. Jews also, and Egyptians. Everyone was in agreement that we have to silence the dreamer. But it's time to take the bones of Yosef back, to take back our dreams. And the way to do it is we're the Jewish women. We have to hold up the mirrors for everyone close to us and allow them to see themselves together with Yiddishkeit, to believe it's achievable and all their bracha can happen. And if we can hold that mirror up and make a very big table, because a lot of people who belong by that table have a huge table by your Seder, and have everybody sitting there, make them feel part of it, and then we'll all take the bones of Yosef out and we'll march into our promised land, and we'll live dreams that nobody ever imagined. Yosef's dreams were nothing. The angels themselves will be bowing before us. May we be zeicha to see ourselves in the mirror, to see ourselves. This is what Hashem wanted for us. That we'll never have to be disgusted by dreams. We'll look in the mirror and feel nothing but the pride of deserving. Hashem chose us, and now we have to choose ourselves. Have a beautiful Pesach.